Welcome to Kitchen Table Conversations, a series of short and shareable conversation starters for those of us who have or love and support people with a complicated and beautiful brain. Here's your host, Angela Geddes.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Kitchen Table Conversations, where we dive into the complexities of mental health, neurodevelopment, and family systems through a compassionate and informed perspectives. I'm your host, Angela, a registered social worker, a psychotherapist, and a supervisor of a passionate team of FASD-informed clinicians. I'm honored to work alongside so many incredible professionals who bring such depth and dedication to this vital field. And to start the new year off, we're going to continue our efforts to build capacity so that more families and individuals get to experience the opportunity to have people and service providers understand what they're going through and not have to explain themselves and to retell their story again and again and again. Again, I'm really honored to do this work and honored to be in the field long enough to be able to share what I've learned over the years. So today, once again, we want to address a very critical gap in our system and discuss why we desperately need more social workers or more clinicians and allied health professionals trained to feel more competent and confident in their ability to screen, assess, and support people living with very complex mental health and learning challenges. And these challenges often have roots in prenatal health, specifically prenatal alcohol exposure and to other substances. So let me start once again with some of the staggering statistics. For those of you who have been following me since the beginning, you'll have heard this before, but I do think it's worth sharing once again. In Ontario, remember that 99.5% of the individuals who would qualify for a full FASD diagnosis don't know they have it. They won't have access to assessment services, and especially the assessment services that adhere to the Canadian guidelines recommending that there's a very comprehensive, multidisciplinary team approach. This is vital. This approach is vital. The multidisciplinary team is necessary to get a clear diagnostic picture from the psychologist's perspective, from the medical perspective, from speech and language, from occupational therapy, and from a social work and case management perspective that gets to contribute to what these symptoms look like on a day-to-day basis and how they all intersect with some of the demands that life puts on us in general and some of those really complex but yet subtle nuances that often come with prenatal alcohol and other substance exposure. So we need to get a clear diagnostic picture, but we also need to really better understand the functional abilities and allow people to have better insight into their areas of deficit and these brain-based symptoms that need a different approach and different ways to support. So the scale of the issue I've talked about before as well. FASD is more prevalent than autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and Tourette syndrome combined. Prenatal alcohol exposure is, in fact, the leading cause of developmental disabilities and therefore mental health conditions in Canada. Yet, and the globe actually, but yet the awareness and the resources allocated to this condition lags far behind. And we're not talking about rare or isolated cases. This is a public health epidemic. In Ontario alone, over 660,000 people likely have FASD but are misdiagnosed and misunderstood. And this estimate is based on low conservative estimates, but based on really, really good research. So the research has scanned communities and made this assessment very generically available to communities and to schools and got a picture of prevalence rates being about 4% of our general population. But you also have to understand that this is a low estimate because there's still a number of people who don't want to participate in these research projects. And there is a stigma attached to acknowledging or confirming that alcohol exposure was a part of your prenatal history. So there is a stigma, there is an apprehension, and there is a lot of feelings that go along with this condition that can't be denied when we talk about our prevalence rate. So right now, the most recent research indicates that in North America, FASD is 8% of our general population. Again, that's low estimate, but that's very close to 10%, which means it's very close to 1 in 10. So let that sit in for a minute. In North America, 1 in 10 people have or would have an FASD diagnosis, which means that they are struggling very significantly in, at the very least, 3 specific brain domains. And these brain domains include things like academic performance, cognitive functioning, memory, attention and concentration, executive functioning, affect regulation, adaptive living skills, motor skills, sensory processing, language skills. Those areas, at the very least, 3 of them need to be significantly impaired. And it's been my experience that people with FASD never just struggle in 3 areas. So the areas are complex, but they're subtle. And we all have people with FASD who are challenged with some of these symptoms in our own circles, in our professional circles, and certainly in our personal circles as well. So when you think about it, across Canada, there are an estimated 1.6 million people living with FASD, but yet fewer than 2% of them have ever had access to an assessment. So that means that there is an increased role for those of us on the front line to be better equipped to screen and assess. So this is where social workers and other frontline professionals play an essential role. And this is why I developed the training specific for us. This is different than generic training. This gives us more skills and more competence and more depth to the learning. We don't need to reinvent the wheel or build entire new systems, in order to be effective and more helpful. We already have excellent services in healthcare, justice, and child protection, for example. Now, we know there are gaps, but ironically, many of the gaps are due to the fact that justice services and child protection services are overrepresented by people who we think are experiencing challenges related to adverse childhood experiences or trauma or attachment and parenting issues and dysfunction in that regard and family disruption. But actually, so many of them are actually struggling with these subtle and misdiagnosed brain-based conditions that are related to prenatal exposures. So again, these systems can only be effective if professionals understand some of these unique symptoms and challenges of conditions like FASD, because they are on your caseload. And as I said, within justice and within our homeless housing insecurity programs and services, and within our child protection, the rates are much higher than the general population. So, for example, imagine if child protection services were equipped with the knowledge to identify intergenerational FASD. So instead of families being disrupted, parents could receive the support they need to keep their children safe and thriving. So a different way to get to the same place. Missed appointments and emotional dysregulation wouldn't be signs of neglect or disinterest, but rather of symptoms of a brain-based condition that requires a different circle of care and a different approach to the supports and parenting strategies offered. So the training gap. I'm proud to say that our team has developed a unique training program specifically for social workers, psychotherapists, and allied health professionals that already engage in some sort of screening and assessment services. We've had child and youth workers and social services workers and developmental services workers take this training as well. and be really, really enlightened and feel much more competent in their ability to support people on their caseload. It's designed to bridge a gap between the knowledge we need and the services we're currently providing. Research shows that many social workers feel unprepared to address these challenges. We don't know where to turn for relevant training, and this leaves us feeling ineffective, and it often will lead more quickly to burnout. So there's research articles that prove this point. I'm not just making it up, so check out the website for more details around that. When we're able to offer meaningful support, when we understand the root causes of behaviors and challenges and these kinds of symptoms, we can make a real difference. And even on the hard days, knowing that our work has value keeps us going, and it is motivating and very meaningful. So a little bit more about our training program. Starting this February, before the end of the fiscal year, we will be launching a 6-week live virtual training program. While it's tailored for social workers, it's also relevant for other allied professionals, as I mentioned, including child and youth workers and social service workers. So a quick overview of what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the first session is going to focus on introductions and the scope of practice and why FASD is a critical issue, how social workers can contribute to multidisciplinary team assessments, and we'll go over Canadian guidelines for FASD diagnosis and screening. Session 2 will address stigma and mental health, so challenging the assumptions and the biases that often we have and we're taught actually in terms of, environmental factors and parenting strategies that need to be adjusted, and again, once again, the adverse childhood experiences that do contribute to mental health and overall poor health outcomes, but they're not the only consideration. And we'll go over strength-based and needs-based approaches in this area. On session 3, we'll talk about developmental screens and doing a really comprehensive history to get a clearer picture that would travel with this individual and family so that we can continue to build the assessment pieces over time, building relationships as the foundation of assessment and making sure that strong connection and safety is secured, ethical considerations for confirming prenatal alcohol and other substance exposure. We'll be talking about how important it is to gather collateral information and use that to augment existing screening tools. On session 4, we'll talk about the social work assessment reports and those of us that are qualified within our scope of practice and our comfort level and our expertise to be able to really write an effective social work assessment report and be able to share this with confidence that it's going to be meaningful and helpful for the individual through their school or their vocational journey, and to support things like applications for Ontario Disability Support Program or other disability supports. I'm speaking Ontario-based, but again, this is a global issue and it's relevant for every one of us who are in the helping profession across the globe. On session 5, we're going to be talking about therapeutic supports. I missed the point that in session 4, we'll also be talking about how to customize the recommendations for individuals and families to make this really functional and meaningful for their day-to-day. In session 5, once again, we'll be exploring modalities and strategies that work. I've written a new book, so there's some new additions to this round of training. We will be talking about my book that's called Not Your Typical Parenting Guide. And then number 6 will be kind of practical application and to build on what we've learned by going over some case studies, some sample reports, and lots of opportunities for questions and answers. And there will be some insights offered from individuals with lived expertise. So my practice also has peer support workers that are a part of the work in the social work services and therapy and psychotherapy that we offer. Which is again unique but really, really important, and the outcomes are improving as a result. So there'll be this training really does come from the front line and the individual and family perspective. And we are hearing that participants are finding it really, really helpful. All participants report feeling more competent and confident in their ability to screen and identify individuals with complex neurodevelopmental conditions, including specifically FASD. They've learned practical skills that they can use immediately and have a better understanding of how stigma creates barriers to support. And All of the participants said that they would recommend others to attend, and many of the people who have attended have decided to join our team that enables ongoing training and ongoing supervision of their practice. So why this matters: our ultimate goal is to reduce the number of wrong doors that families face when seeking help. By building capacity among frontline professionals, we can create a system where individuals and families affected by FASD are met with understanding and effective support, not frustration and misdiagnosis. So if you're a social worker, a psychotherapist, or allied professional, I encourage you to join us. FASD is, what I said, a global issue, and together we can make a real difference. Visit our website for more details about the training and an opportunity to sign up. There will be more research that validates and some free resources that are available, so take a look. I've got safety plans on there. We've got a book that we've authored with Dr. Claire Mitchell that's titled A Practical Approach to Complex Neurodevelopmental Disorders. There's some handouts for families and friends, for people who have a diagnosis of FASD, and for others who don't have a diagnosis but are also struggling with symptoms of a complex neurodevelopmental disorder. So check out the website for more resources, and let's work together to ensure that every individual and family has access to the support they deserve. And remember, it's up to all of us to support healthy pregnancies, healthy individuals, healthy families, and healthy communities. I'm so glad that you tuned in today. If you appreciated this episode, please feel free to share. If you know of anybody who may benefit from this training, once again, please feel free to share. With many thanks, Angela.